I am here. It is a casual Wednesday day. My name is Stacy. I'm a mindset coach. I like to say a life on life's terms coach because life is life, and so all of us could use a little help navigating through life these days. So that's why I'm here. I set an intention every morning to help at least one person today. Maybe you're going to be that one person today because you matter. The one person matters. I was doing a live on Friday night. We're building a community here. This is a community where it's really kind of a healing community. There a lot of the reasons that we're like dysregulated and we're trying to navigate. My glove. Good morning. It's good to see you. How are you doing today? So as I promised on Monday night, we're going to talk about trauma bonds today. You know, some of us shared about these things, but we're not quite clear on what they are. And so it did me good to be able to do the research also on what a trauma bond is. So we're going to talk about that today, and we'll give it just a few minutes. So did you get the interview yet? Good morning, Greg. It's good to see you, although it's evening where you are, isn't it? So it's good to see you here. Yeah. So I don't know if y'all know, but I'll be praying for y'all up on my roof this morning. Sure enough, I was saying your names and everything. So because I believe in energy. It's so cool when we think about energy and how that the air that we breathe, the air that we share is going everywhere. And so when I say a name or set an intention for people, I do believe there's magic in it. Yes, you did finally make it. That's what I'm saying. I was praying on the roof this morning. I'm so proud of this community that we're creating here. You know, about just learning to share and express our thoughts and our feelings without judgment, you know, discerning, just learning to grow and how to navigate through this life. You know, I talked about, I think the other day, yesterday, I was talking about, you know, strategizing, which means we're strategizing is coming from our survival mode. And then are we navigating? Navigating, you know, is more of that discernment that I'm talking about. Hello, Bag Talk Media. How are you this morning? So that's what we're going to talk about this morning when I was asked to talk about this today. So hopefully Rodolfo will get in here because he was who asked me to explain trauma bond. I know for me, and I'm going to, you know, I have my notes here so that when I start talking and stuff, y'all know how I get excited and then I have to go back to the notes so I stay on track, or else I'll, you know, when I finish the live, I'll be like, oh, dog, I didn't say this. I didn't say that. I didn't. You know, so I have notes. So we'll be talking about the trauma bonds. I talked about how, you know, I learned about trauma bonds is a lot of times people say, is it a twin flame? You know, when you get on YouTube and things, a lot of times people think that people who push you are your twin flame. But there's a difference between are they a twin flame or a trauma bond? And the difference is this, y'all. Are they putting you down, pushing you, or are they supporting you, pushing you? And I don't mean just support like is in the money sense or something like that. I mean, are they supporting you? Like, are they encouraging you, helping point out the gifts that you have? You know, I sat with a man last night and he can sing, y'all. He can sing. And I didn't know this man could sing. You know that we all have these hidden talents and gifts. Good morning, Robbie. How are you doing this morning? My God, I write notes about my collecting journey. Awesome. Awesome. Because I know for me, when I write something down, because I have calendars and they're in my phone, but I also have this paper calendar in front of me. Hi, Shanakya 7. How are you? So I have something coming up with Shanakya 7 is that on Tuesdays or Thursdays, maybe next week, maybe the week after, we're going to start doing like a question. You know, he's going to ask me some questions about mindset, mental health, and about specifics, what I coach in, like addiction recovery and codependence, you know, some different things. Good morning, Mama. I love you too. So thank you, my love. I just love the community that we're creating here, y'all. It means a lot to me. So I don't see Rodolfo up in here yet, and he wanted me to talk about the trauma bond. Anybody else interested in hearing about what the details of the trauma? Oh, well, thank you, Shanaka 7. So anybody here, you know, understand the trauma bond or interested? I hope you are interested. Maybe he'll get to watch the replay if Rodolfo doesn't make it, but I bet he'll make it at some time. So, like I said, I thought that a trauma, we can be confused. Baby Grinch is in the cage. He put himself there. He could come out at any time, but he's decided he's going to stay in this cage and play with his toys. So we're going to discuss the trauma bond. So I have my notes here. We're going to get started with the notes. Thank you all for being here this morning. It's so good to see you all this Wednesday morning. Remember, y'all, it is Wednesday. When I was on YouTube this week, we're doing the self-esteem alphabet just before we get started in my notes. We're doing the self-esteem alphabet. Yeah, you have the bond. You've been married, is it 23 or 24 years? So it is Winning Wednesday, Mama. So it's Wednesday. And so in the self-esteem alphabet I was talking about on Monday, because I give them, we were doing it. There you are, Rodolfo. We were waiting for you to get here before we get started. So I'm glad you're here. So consistency is the word today. Obviously, we're on the third week of the self-esteem alphabet. So consistency, because there was a part of me that didn't want to get on Facebook Monday morning because it's gotten where, maybe only 4 people see my videos or whatever. And it doesn't seem like it's helping anybody. And when I get up on that roof and I set my intention in the morning, then that's what it's for, is to help at least one person. And it was just seeming stagnate, And so I was like, but then I remembered that it was self-esteem alphabet day, and it was the letter C. And the letter C stands for consistency. So it also stands for, I'm not going to put up with that shit, which isn't the letter C. So I'm just not. It's kind of like my day off, So we're going to be respectful in here. And if somebody's not respectful, they going. So anyway, consistency. And that means suiting up and showing up. So it means suiting up and showing up, even when we don't feel like it, because I talked about today when I went on the live is Michael Jordan. He missed a lot of baskets before he hit the basket. So it's about practice and development and not giving up. And so that's kind of like our story's talking about today, because a lot of times people who've been in trauma bonds may say, my picker's broke, and just resolve themselves to that. But if we're healing, it doesn't mean that you have to be in a relationship with somebody, but it doesn't mean also that you have to, that you can't love yourself. Because when we love ourselves, then that's the main thing that matters. Because if we love ourselves, we're not going to attract a trauma bond. There we go. Sometimes some people just want to be rude, but it was cool, right, y'all? What was it, Monday night? There was a guy that said he was coming in to troll, but he thought that I was nice, so he decided not to troll. He probably subscribed, because the reality is hurt people, and we were talking about those cluster B personalities on Monday night. So that's why we're expanding into the trauma bond. So here's my notes. So we're going to discuss trauma bonds, and some people may slip into trauma bonds thinking that these people that push us are the twin flame or the soulmate. I know I used to. I would be chasing. This is what my central nervous system learned to do, was to chase that attention, to chase that love, because I didn't know that it was in me. You see, I thought it was outside of me. So if somebody's not encouraging you and supporting you, and they're pushing you, that might be a trauma bond. If they're saying you should do this, you should do that, because that was one of the first things that, if you haven't heard me talk before, that I said in therapy, that I learned in therapy, is to quit shooting on myself, because shooting is shaming to a degree. And so where did we learn that? And that's the root to healing, is where did we learn that? So the reality is that when we have experienced trauma, that in itself just doesn't make sense. When you experience trauma, especially if you were a child, it just doesn't make sense. So that's often why we complicate things, is because we're still trying to make sense out of what doesn't make sense. So we keep falling into that pattern, that cycle. And so it's often that we don't sense our own reality, because they will draw you in. People that are trauma bonded will draw you into their reality, so where you're fragmented, dysregulated, and can't be in your own body. You don't know what's going to happen next. You're trying to do something, stay focused on something, and they're constantly interrupting you, and that interrupts your nervous system. So the reality is that when we've experienced trauma, it just doesn't, we try to make sense out of what doesn't make sense. So let's see, I want to make sure that I get all this. I should have put it in bigger print to keep up with my notes. There's that, even with my glasses. So the problem is that we just adapt to this. Hello, I have a father and mother wounds, and I can't have healthy relationships. Any help? Well, I'm glad that you're here, Nora Mustafa, because that's what we're talking about this morning. That's right, Robbie. We can't process things we're not old enough to. So what we do is it becomes our survival skills. And so in healing, we learn to turn it into tangible tools. Tangible tools is what you're very welcome. And I hope that this is going to be helpful for you, Greg. My children's social services officer is leaving. So myself and kids have made homemade chocolates for her. She needs my help after the accident. A good woman. That is amazing. That's amazing. I'm glad that you have her. I am not free at 11 my time today, Chanakya. I have even though it's my day off, I have a busy day. One of my best friends, I have two best friends here, and one of them lives in Spain, so she's really not here, but the other one's coming in today. So I'm so excited. I'm getting prepared for that, and I actually have a person that I'm talking to here shortly about sponsoring. So I've got a busy day getting ready for everything that's happening today that's going to be fun. But yes, thank you so much. Okay. So the thing is that when our central nervous system is acting up, it's our ego, it's our protection. And we have a saying in recovery, one guy used to say, my ego's not my amigo, meaning that I'm pushing people away when I'm really trying to control people. And I was talking to somebody yesterday about this. I'm working with a few people that have dealt with infidelity. One person dealt with infidelity. The other one just felt rejected by their partner. And so I work with, at least the one and her partner, so that I can put the puzzle pieces together about how did we get here. And then the other one, it's just about that healing, because they both have trauma. So, we're talking about this. Do they have to split apart? I don't think so. So not everybody, when I'm talking about trauma bond, not everybody will have to split up because they have a trauma bond. But not everybody will stay together. Same as if people don't have a trauma bond. So we're looking at this today. So I'm going to make this bigger because I am having struggles reading today. I woke up actually at 4 something this morning. I sure did. And so we're going to make this larger and make it easier on Miss Stacy today. All right. All right. So I don't want to be miscommunicating today on my notes. I want to be able to answer this as quickly, efficiently, and in order, because that's why I make notes. Because if I don't have notes, when I start looking at comments and stuff, I won't remember where I left off at. And so, like I said, after the live, I'll be like, oh, I should have said this. I should have said that. And what we don't should on ourselves. So how do I do this? I am proactive in my life. So this is the thing, is that when we're in a trauma bond, our own reality is overlooked. But your soul wants to grow. But your ego is trying to protect yourself with the familiar. So this is where we have this disharmony. So in working with my self-trust reset program, what I do is help us to acknowledge our ego and acknowledge our soul, rather than trying to shove the negative things down. Because if we don't heal the negative things, they're just going to keep popping back up like the beach ball. So we just need to address those things and tell our own story, rather than being the character in somebody else's story in a trauma bond, doing what they say and looking for them for guidance because we don't trust ourselves, you see. And who wants to admit they don't trust themselves? Nobody. Maybe somebody. I do have people who say that. So anyway, that's what, in working with the couples that I was talking about, is that we're working on trust. Trust. And it starts with self-trust, because if you have had your trust in a trauma bond altered, then it's going to be, I try to tell them, I'm not encouraging anybody to leave any relationships unless there's physical abuse, because these wounds can expose your wounds, that catalyst. So it's not about the victim villain thing that I talked about Monday night, is are we going to have a catalyst? But it implies that we need to grow. I wrote 21. Oh, thank you. Well, I don't know. So it apparently spoke to you. So your ego will tell you, let's stay safe and let's stay with what's familiar. But your soul is saying, I could do this and I could do that. So this is why you need, when I'm talking about, is it a twin flame or a trauma bond? The twin flame and trauma bond won't be supporting you, maybe. Or if they are indeed twin flame, they will be supporting you, encouraging you, saying, oh, you're amazing when you do this, or I like this. They won't be trying to snuff you out all the time. There's some people who, every time you're trying and you think you're doing something good, it may be like a house that you grew up in where you're so proud of yourself. I worked with one lady. She was so proud of herself. She got all pretty and dressed up for her daddy when she was a little girl. And then when he saw her, he's like, your skirt's too short. Who dressed you? Da, 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 da. And this creates a trauma for a child, because they're not going to feel good enough. I'm glad that you got to come on, though, my love. And maybe you'll get to watch the rest later if this speaks to you. I do have books, and what I'm reading currently, and I have like 4 books up on my shelf that I often refer to, read, and everything else. So there's this one, What Happened to You? And this is what I talk about a lot, is instead of, a lot of people are going to the doctor, because my specialty is addiction recovery, codependency, and grief. And a lot of people go to the doctor and the doctor says, what's wrong? So a lot of people think that, well, your soul's probably trying to speak to you, but what happens is we bury our soul. We bury our soul with our low self-worth and the things that we do to try to not have that low self-worth. So this is why I talk about healing, because we got to get that stuff up off of our soul. So this is the book, What Happened to You? It's by Oprah Winfrey and Dr. Bruce D. Perry. And I'm going to read to you something where I've stopped in this book, or marked a page in this book. Good morning, Biz and Trish Broth, my glove. Try the Laura Ingalls. Oh, yeah, Little House on the Prairie. I watch the shows. So some people, neglect in itself creates a trauma bond. So I'm just, it's one of those deals, you just open the book up to the page. I'm glad that you asked about the book. Thank you. And I wrap. I hope that we can help you connect with your soul, because I believe that we all have a soul. I'm not trying to deny your reality, but we all have a soul, and it can speak to us, but we got to get quiet and quit trying to figure everything out. And so at the end of this, we're going to breathe, and I hope that will be helpful to you too. So Oprah asked Dr. Perry, she says, so help me understand neglect. Let me turn it this way so I'm looking at y'all. And he says, let's think about the developing child. In order for the genetic potential of that child to be expressed, a variety of necessary experiences is required. This is your talents and your gifts, and your soul will tell you, If these experiences are absent, or if their timing pattern or nature is abnormal, key capabilities do not develop. Neglect is most destructive early in life. When the brain is rapidly growing, early neglect interferes with a child's getting the necessary stimulation required for normal development. So he starts talking about the Romanian orphans. So this is a study. The Romanian orphans, it's likely that more than 500,000 children spent part of their early lives in the state-run institutional orphanages during the I can't say it, but anyway, in regime in Romania in 1989. If y'all know how to sound it out, please help me. So, in 1989, when communism ended in this country and the public press saw the horrible conditions these children had been subjected to, they were often 40 to 60 babies or toddlers in a single large room, each in their own crib all day long, with only one or two caregivers rotating among them over the course of a 12-hour shift. The children suffered deprivation, malnutrition, abuse, and more. Even after being removed from the institutions, they grew up with a range of deficits. Some had low IQs, others couldn't walk, most had major problems forming and maintaining relationships. He says he worked with many children removed from these orphanages in general. The longer the child was there, the longer the deprivation and the more serious the problems. Ironically, in some overcrowded institutions, children who had to share cribs ultimately did better. So it's unity and community, and that's what we're trying to create here. This is the book, What Happened to You? Because what they said, Dr. Oprah and Dr. Bruce D. Perry, is if you went to the doctor and they instead asked of what's wrong with you, then if they ask what happened to you, they would know where your anxiety came from. They would know where your senses come from, because just because we know we're asking what's wrong with us at the doctor doesn't mean that we're in touch with our senses. So a lot of the things that I talk about here is how we get to know our bodies, because a lot of us abuse our bodies, not thinking about it. My dad passed away at 58 years old. He abused his body. He was addicted. And he used to say, if I would have known I was going to live this long, I would have taken better care of myself. You do know the truth about your soul, I rap. But we're in an evolution journey. So I hope that you're able to have a relationship. It's about having that relationship with our body, mind, and soul, that there is something to that for us if we want it. But if we don't want it, then we're just, we have to do, if I wanted what somebody had, then I had to do what they did, was something that I learned in my recovery, because I used to think some people just had it and some people just didn't. As far as whether it was success, whether it was love, whether it was popularity, whether it was this, I would think they just have it. They felt okay with themselves for whatever reason. They certainly weren't in that orphanage. So trauma bonds, why we stay attached to what hurts. So we're going to talk about that now. Thank you all for being here once again. Some people slip into trauma bonds believing that the person pushing and pulling them is their twin flame or soulmate. But if someone is not encouraging your healing, supporting your growth, or respecting your boundaries and helping you become more of who you truly are, they are not your soulmate. And it's that simple. That simple. All right. So the reality is that trauma itself does not make sense. And because it does not make sense, we spend years trying to make sense of things that were never healthy to begin with. I just put Lucifer out. I don't have time to be trying to channel through the negative comments or those. So some days I do and some days I don't. So thank you, though, underrated God. That's true. But sometimes people are just trying to be mean to people in here. You're very welcome, Rodolfo. I hope that this will be helpful. So thank you for being here. So the reality is that trauma doesn't make sense. And because it does not make sense, we spend those years trying, right? So what we do is we overanalyze, we rationalize, we adapt, we justify. We will justify. We're going to talk about that here. And we abandon parts of ourselves trying to maintain this connection. We forget who we are. Thank you very much, underrated God. I sure do appreciate that. Yeah, I have some days where, I had a guy come on Monday night that said he was going to troll, but he thought that I was nice. So he stayed and he even participated, and it was very, very good. But sometimes I just sense that this one maybe isn't going to do that. And so I want to be mindful of you all too, because I know you all read the comments too, and we don't have time to be, having somebody play like that sometimes. So we abandon parts of ourselves sometimes trying to maintain connection. And the soul has that longing. The soul is saying, I want to grow. The ego is saying, let's stay safe and familiar because we know about this. You're not good enough, because somewhere in the back of our mind, maybe we're telling ourselves, I'm not good enough. I gave at least one client yesterday that assignment because that assignment was given to me to put I am good enough on my mirror so that I reinforce that instead of trying to compare myself with other people. Underrated God. Yeah, I mean, that's the internet in a nutshell. It's up to them if they want to listen or not, but my ears are wide open to what you're going to say. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And you're exactly right, Robbie. Trolls are oxygen thieves sometimes. Some days I got it to try to help the trolls, but some days I just am like, no, I'm staying focused here. I think it's children too I rap. That's why I try not to be too mean. It's because I think they're really like when I was a kid, back when I was a kid, people used to prank call. But I think this is just another extension of prank calling in this evolutionary time. So that's what I think that it is. So yeah, just try to get a reaction. And so that's what we talk about is, healing to where we don't react to things, but respond to things instead. So we start with the trolls, right? Some days I have to respond by hitting the timeout button. And some days I just have to, respond and try to be nice. Today ain't the day. Like, thank you, Robbie. So what happens when familiar isn't safe? What if it's just not safe and it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse? And we just keep hoping because we get little snippets. Good morning, Pammy. How are you today? It's good to see you here. Y'all, I want to encourage you to follow Pammy because this is the thing is I myself do not go work out in the gym. A lot of times people will rationalize and justify not working out. Now, Greg, I know that you work out. You have all that, everything to do there at your home. But I know they do need help. You're right. Some days I have it, but some days I just want to stay on point. So, yes. So y'all, if you get a chance, follow Manjuria's Journey with Pam because I admire her. She will be at work and she shows how we can do, our workouts. We don't have a cop out for our workouts. We can do a workout while we're at work. Now, I understand some people need to go to the gym to be encouraged because it is good to have accountability and it's good to have encouragement. So that's kind of what we're talking about with these trauma bonds is some people end up so isolated in a trauma bond and we really don't want to do that. That does not make our soul happy. Oh, you got the lettuce in your garden. That's exciting. You got it for Peter Rabbit, got it. The Wascally Rabbit. So that's where the confusion begins. When you have a desire and a longing in your soul, but then your ego is like saying, no, 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 we can't do this. So the ego has arrogance. The soul has humility. The ego says, no, 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 this will never work. That's what the ego says. The soul says, I want to do this. But then the ego talks it out of it. So we end up with this conversation with ourselves that really keeps us in confusion. So a lot of times we go and avert ourselves, distract ourselves with food, with somebody else's business, or watching something on TV that has, or the phone that has nothing to do with us. We distract ourselves because it gets overwhelming. So rather than healing what's making us overwhelming, sometimes we just distract. So thank you for the hearts. Is that you, Pammy, or did Kim manage to get on here? So that's where the confusion begins, that's where the reality, it may be somebody else, I don't know. That's where the confusion begins. That's where the reality becomes distorted because our reality, when we have this kind of division within ourselves, that's why I talk about merging the ego and the soul so that we can have harmony because it doesn't feel like harmony when we don't acknowledge that our ego and our soul. Thank you for putting your link in there, Pam. Y'all follow that link, please. How many do we have to go now, Pam? And if you want us to support your channel too, please feel free to put your link in here. Okay? So thank you, because that's what we want to do is support each other here. All right, so what happens when the reality becomes distorted is we stop trusting ourselves. because we misplaced our trust in people who hurt us, right? So that's where people say, my picker's broke. After enough disappointment, betrayal, rejection, or emotional inconsistency, many people begin disconnecting from themselves even more. Robbie, is it human nature to distract like that? Well, I don't think that it was before we got TVs and telephones and the tete-to-tete stuff. I think that when people were able to get in nature, maybe they didn't distract as much. Of course, there's things in nature to distract yourself with, but there's that wonder and staying in our business. Three more, y'all, three more. So if you can go to this link that she put in there, go to her channel and subscribe to her too, so we can get her to that 1K. All right. So that's why we stop trusting ourselves. And so we may think that we're not going to be able to get somebody different. And we won't, as long as we don't work on our healing in ourselves and those things that hurt us, and take that journey, get more curious about yourself than you are somebody else. Why do they do this? Sometimes when I'm working with people with infidelity, they're trying to protect themselves. And so they're looking for that partner to do something wrong. I went into relationships, it wasn't even my own infidelity. My dad was infidelity. And so but it was learned behavior because my mom used to stalk my dad to catch him. I'm telling Mama. But so she used to stalk him to catch him. So by the time I was 8 years old, I knew how to stalk people because my daddy would be getting in trouble. But they were only 16 and 18 when they got married. So there's that. So anyway, but we won't trust. That's the thing. We do live in a world of opposites, Irap. I love that you said that because I'm not denying that. We live in a paradoxical world. We live in a world, the electromagnetic field is positive and negative. Well, welcome. Thank you for stopping by, Dalen Sanders. Well, thank you. So we do live in a world where everything's good until it's not, and it's bad until it's not. Everything's positive until it's not, and it's negative until it's not, because everything is evolving and changing, or not. You have a choice whether you want to change your mind or not, but you are going to evolve and change. You spied on your father too? They be sneaky, 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 sneaky. And what that creates is what? Insecurity. So we have that built-in insecurity. That's why we will tolerate and put up with a trauma bond, because that built-in insecurity. We'll be second-guessing ourselves. Because in our heart of hearts, we know that we're worthy of love. You all are worthy of love. I'm worthy of love. This was something I was born with. And, Iraq may say we were born with the other two. And yes, we're right. That's right. Because when we hate anything, that's a part that's in us. A lot of times we think that love is outside of ourselves. So when we're, insecure and in a dysfunctional relationship, oftentimes we're heartbroken because we thought that love was with somebody else. Your mom did too, Pam. It was the thing. It was the thing. You got to catch them. So when I started dating, guess what I did? I thought I had to catch them messing around on me all the time. I spent more time trying to catch boyfriends when I was 16 years old, messing around on me. Grinch is up to something. Yeah, Grinch loves to chew on fleece. Grinch is chewing on fleece. So I used to, I thought that was normal to try to catch your man or your guy messing around on you all the time. And that was a part of my trying to control not being hurt. But I didn't know all of that at 16. A lot of us don't know it at 26 or 36 or 46. I didn't know this. So this is why I'm here, is to help us to understand ourselves. And while some people may think, oh, this is negative, it's like, well, we all have the negative and positive, capabilities within us. We do. But a lot of people, that's why this stuff is pushed down on our soul. I know, right? Yeah, God rest his soul. He's passed away. He passed away at 49 years old because guess what? He was an addict too. He was a worse addict than me, of course, because that's how I used to esteem myself, is hanging out with people whose troubles were worse than mine. So he's not here anymore, but I still pray for him, because I'll be praying for people that are here in the earthly plane, in the spiritual plane, and in the digital plane. You all, I was telling people I was praying for you all this morning, and look, you're here. So yeah, it's this energy, and we all have this energy that does come from the negative and the positive. And the trucks where the mistress called rang 2 times, hung up, and called it again. Then my dad would say he needed to go see a man about a dog. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Yeah. They stayed together, but he had his side lady. Yeah. And I don't know how I feel about that, because if they're supporting the wife too, I don't know. I'm not judging. I come from a place of discernment. There's one time in my life where that would have been real tricks. It is tricky. There's one time in my life, where that would have been really a terrible thing. But I think that a lot of people have done it, and I don't think that they're, good morning, Mr. Simon Beard, I don't have a judgment on them. I don't, because for some reason, if they're taking care of their family and they are taking care, there's some, I believe, that they've done this and they've been able to manage to be there for their family, manage to be there for their wife. I'm good, thank you. And managed to be there. And so I don't know. I think some women would just like to have the credit card and the family and the kids and their business and they don't care. So that's okay too. I even had a client that had a polyamorous relationship, and I kind of thought, well, okay, because I don't judge. I ain't judging. I don't know. It's so we're talking about trust though, and what we need to trust. What we need to trust. And a lot of people can't trust somebody once they've been unfaithful. I can't either. I can't either. I will not trust somebody once they've been unfaithful, and it's like, because if they do it once, they're going to do it again. True. He did take care of the family too, both. Thankfully, he was fixed by then, or I'd have some more. I have some more siblings. That's funny. All right. One problem is that people take thugs personally. What happened outside of you has nothing to do with you. I judge things on a scale of merit. Well, that's good. That's good. But as children, we don't see it that way. As children, we want to fix things. We want things to be okay because sometimes our parents are hostile and violent and hurt. And so as children, sometimes we want to fix that because children are sensitive. And so I think that children are so much in touch with the universe or God or whoever when they're born. And then the patterns, these patterns and these things start taking over. And so they forget. So this is why when I'm working with y'all or working with people, that I say, we're not becoming anybody else because we've already done that. If we were in codependency or we were trying to people please or these kind of things, we've already compromised ourselves. So this is to empower you so that you can better learn to negotiate. My hat's off to you if you can just rationalize this stuff and do it and and not have insecurity. But a lot of us, when we grew up with insecurity, we have insecurity because it was a learned behavior. So we talk about unlearning those behaviors here. So eventually, some people give up on relationships altogether when their trust has been broken, right? When they've had that inconsistency, betrayal, rejection. And it doesn't mean that you're doomed. It doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you. And this is what I try to, this is what I tell people. This is what I told my client yesterday. This is what I tell people is just because somebody cheats on you doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. It doesn't. But it takes emotional maturity to know that. So, people if they do drugs, if they cheat, they're doing it because they want to. It has nothing to do with you because people do because that's what they do. They may use you as an excuse. Emotional maturity calls for us to look for a reason, not an excuse. My reasons are more on the positive plane for what I do. My excuse is going to usually lead me into self-sabotage on some degree, some level. Because I'm not doing what I need to do if I'm making an excuse. I'm not focusing on me and my growth. So there's nothing wrong with being alone, and it's peaceful and healing. But suffering, longing, believing healthy love is unattainable. That usually points to something deeper that still needs healing, is all that I'm saying. So, because often what we're truly longing for is not perfection, we're longing to feel seen and heard, safe and valued, emotionally connected. And maybe with one or more of our parents, we didn't feel that way. So we may still have that longing because your soul knows. Hi, sir. Okay, I'm not going to say your name, but hello. So our soul knows, that we were born worthy, valuable, and divine, just like Irap was saying. Now, if we could just know that, but sometimes we get in these patterns because we learn what we see. I was listening to something this morning on Blink List, and it was talking about how we had to learn 7 plus 5 equals 12. We had to learn that. We did not just wake up and know 7 plus 5 equals 12. Well, this is the same with our patterns in ourself, is that we learned these patterns. If anybody asks us, we don't have to think. Most of us, 7 plus 5, okay, it equals 12. But our patterns are the same way to where we can just snap it off like that. Okay? Often what we are truly longing for isn't perfection. It's those other things, right? So whether it's through family, friendships, work, or intimate relationships, the deeper healing comes from addressing the fears buried underneath the trauma. So let's explore that trauma bond. I read to y'all out of here. Ooh, people are just falling off like flies on here. I read to y'all on here about neglect. So when we're looking at this trauma bond, addressing the truth buried beneath the trauma. And so I had a client one time that she was upset because she was working a job with somebody, and she and this coworker would be off on one side, and then the boss would be on another with her friends. So she felt left out, neglected. She felt left out because the boss and her team would be going to get, thank you, Pam. Her boss and her team would be going to get Botox or doing this or that and the other. So she's like, well, they go and do this. So she was excluding herself from that, because this is oftentimes what people learn to do when they feel neglected so they won't be hurt, is they'll be like doing this thing. So I asked her, I said, well, did you want to go get Botox and do what they're doing? And she said, no. And I said, well, why are we upset? And she said, because it would be nice to be asked, free Palestine. Okay, this isn't a political channel and this isn't that kind of channel, but there are channels like that. But if you're interested in trauma bonds, that's what we're talking about this morning, Bala Shah. All right, if you do that again, I'm going to have to put you in timeout because I need to stay on point and focused. Okay? All right. So what is a trauma bond? A trauma bond is a powerful and unhealthy emotional attachment formed through cycles of pain, fear, relief, affection, and emotional conditioning. Ah, very cool. Very cool. Thank you, Pam. I'm missing some of the comments. That's why I'm glad that that you or sometimes I have to put them in timeout, even though they may need to hear this. Is that I'll get distracted, and that's why I have the notes so I don't. But yes, some days it's more of a challenge than others. Oh, no worries. Thank you. So a trauma bond isn't built on healthy love. It's built on survival. These are the survival skills you might have learned as a child, and you might have watched your mom or your dad with these survival skills, learning how to control or try to control. And what they're trying to control is the pain of not being hurt. But what happens is, as I've shared before, I did it too. I was guilty, as we try to heal our kids from our own pain in a way. And sometimes when they see us doing these things, this is how they think. This is how they're conditioning 7 plus 12. This is how we heal pain, is we control some shit so we don't get hurt. So we tend to, because we're focused on that, end up with trauma bond because we're not focused on a healthy relationship. We're too focused on this. So the survival, the relationship becomes addictive because the brain and nervous system become conditioned to unpredictability. We may think that that's passion. In my youth, I think that I clarified that as being passionate, but it's a trauma bond. So That's what happens. The relationship can become addictive because the brain and the nervous system become conditioned to unpredictability. That's what happens. Your brain and your nervous system become conditioned to unpredictability. So we may rationalize and justify and think, this is passion. This is love. We're living, because it keeps you excited, because maybe you grew up in that excitement, or maybe you longed for excitement. So one moment there's tension, the next moment there's criticism, the next moment there's withdrawal, the next moment there's manipulation or abuse. So this keeps us jumping, and it makes us think it's passion, but it's your nervous system. Because you're feeling all kinds of things, but we haven't learned to recognize that. So suddenly then there's affection and attention and apologies or temporary closeness. So we may think, oh, we're closer than ever because we've endured this for so long. So we may even rationalize and justify, oh, we're closer than ever, because we'll think that this is over, and then they're back. I love, if you don't, a relationship coach called Matt Huzzy. And he mostly talks about, the relationships with men and women, but he says that, like, when a person, it could be the same for women and men. When a person calls you and they say, "Oh, I miss you," but you had a falling out, they were mad at you, they neglected you, they abandoned you, and then they call and say they miss you. Well, a lot of people just want to say, "Oh, okay." Guilty. I've done it. And then we let them back in, and then it's the same thing later on. And the hurt keeps getting compounded and compounded. So what he says is, when they call and say, "I miss you," and they haven't stated anything about the prior, about apology of why they just abandoned you, or why they neglected you, or why they ghosted you, then they're just coming back for sex, probably, or security. Because when we're insecure, sometimes we bounce from different relationships. So the brain begins to associate relief with love, because you are love, but you're not feeling it. So during conflict, the body releases stress hormones like cortisol, and during moments of affection, dopamine. So you get this up and down, just like, was said earlier, as we live in an electromagnetic universe. Even your breath goes up and down, your heart rate up and down, everything will go up and down. But regulation helps us to handle when things are up and down. So this is why we breathe at the end of these. Thank you, darling. So this creates a powerful emotional dependency that can feel almost impossible to break. Like I said, it's addictive because it gives you the highs and the lows. So, which is why many people asked, if this relationship hurts me so much, why can't I leave? Why can't I leave? So, because trauma bonds aren't just emotional, they're also physiological. They affect your body too. You will actually get withdrawals in a trauma bond. We may call it anxiety and go get some anxiety medicine, but it's anxiety. We start getting anxious when we're not feeling those highs and lows anymore, just like in addiction to anything. Whether it's food, you get the food and you're all happy, but you have a coping problem and then you need the food. It's like that. It's like our coping. So signs you may be in a trauma bond. Walking on eggshells is one. You constantly monitor your words, emotions, behavior, or appearance to avoid conflict, criticism, rejection, confrontation. The fixer mentality. If I could just, right? You believe that if you love them enough, heal enough, sacrifice enough, or change enough, the relationship will finally become healthy. We stay longer than the expiration date, right? Addictive cravings. You experience emotional withdrawal when they pull away, then feel an intense emotional high when they return with affection and attention. So sometimes we even protect the abuser, because this is emotionally abusive. When you get abandoned, when you get, ghosted and these things, that's emotional abuse. You defend them to friends. Oh, they just need to take space. For me, I have to be in a relationship. I had to learn to use my big girl words. So anyone that knows me has to learn to use their big boy words. If they need to take space, they need not ghost me. They need to just say, I need to take space. And in working with people too, Rodolfo, sometimes I wonder if this is why I like fictional sad stories or the way I was attracted to a person with a dad story. You can heal because I was one of those people with a dad story and I had to heal. And so people can heal, like we talked about Monday night, but they have to want to heal. See, if you're in a relationship with somebody who does these things, that's the important point, like with what Matt Huzzy was saying. If you're in a relationship with people who do these things, who ghost you and then come back saying, I miss you, and then you have great sex, because that just keeps building, right? I was a peacemaker and walked on eggshells and didn't want my mom to start fights. I know. I know. Hello, Five Elements Infinity. Rayer. Oh, that's you? Yeah. See, that's what I love about on here is that we can all relate with each other to a degree, or at least have compassion. And that in itself creates the discernment that I'm talking about. So thank you all so much for sharing and participating in this. Good day to you, Five Elements. It's good to see you here. So we may, focus and protect the abuser. You defend them to friends, family, even therapists, because part of you desperately wants to preserve the connection. And somewhere underneath, we feel like we deserve it. And that's not true. That's not true. Oh, ghost women and then make love to her, then leave. Oh my goodness. Well, it's also you need to be up front and use your big boy words, Rayer. Here's your mama talking. Use your big boy words. Make sure that she knows that it's casual. And make sure that you've gotten to know her enough, A, that you're not going to get any, disease. And B, that you know that she's not going to become psycho attached to you. This is where we get these people, that you don't know people sometimes, like your Jodi Ariases and things like this. So get to know people. It's not safe to be out there just jumping, hopping. So I was an abuser. You were? Did you do anything to change that, Liz? Oh, in the chat. Okay. Rayer, good point. She works in the massage parlor. Oh, well, I guess that's what they do, right? So ignoring reality. Sometimes back to our notes, ignoring reality. The more you focus on their potential than their patterns, right? Thanks, Pam. Yeah. So focus on, a lot of times people are just more focused on the potential, saying, I know that they're, because in the beginning, they were probably all that you dreamed of in their potential. But then later, when people show you who they are, you have to believe them. So you overlook repeated betrayal, manipulation, cruelty, and consistency because you're attached to who they could be instead of who they consistently show themselves to be. And that's what I did, in the potential, in like those daddy issues that we were talking about, Rayer. So anyway, Lone Wolf. Hey, Lone Wolf. I'm not on here today. We are probably in two different places. That's flattering, but we're talking about these trauma bonds. So we also have cognitive dissonance. Yes, did you subscribe to Pam Five Elements? There's a mosquito. So cognitive dissonance is what we may have also if we're in a, thank you, if we are in a trauma bond. So you know that the relationship is unhealthy, but you still feel emotionally attached and convinced that they care. This is when you're burying your soul because your soul knows I need to go. When you get them to fall in love, they always do weird shit. Well, let me ask, because this is the thing, is that sometimes we're like in the first 3 months, we have these representatives that show up in relationships, right? Is that you really have this love in you and the potential of that. But a lot of times when people haven't learned to love themselves in 3 months, they start picking the other person apart because they're also picking themselves apart on an unconscious level, or they're trying to protect themselves, being that avoidant in that relationship, because there's the attachment and the avoidant, like you said, the weird shit. And when you're in an attachment and avoidant relationship, there's the weird shit. So that's why I was saying in the beginning to be upfront and use your big boy words in a relationship. If you are not capable of carrying out a relationship, And if and you don't want to learn how to try, then just tell somebody right up front. I'm not a relationship person. But if you do want a relationship, but you really look back and track your own history, because as a mindset coach, that's what I help people do, is to track themselves. And so if we look back at our own history and patterns, and we need to heal those because we long to be in a relationship. Greg, I still have my Yamaha guitar. I bought it in 1993. Awesome. All right, Lewis, based on what the hell? I don't know. But seems to be a normal thing. Well, I know that seems to be a normal thing. I don't get on the dating sites because all these people be talking about casual up in there, and that's dangerous. That's dangerous. It's dangerous physically, mentally, emotionally, could be financially. I've known people that, got on these little things, Tinders, and then they got roofied and lost their money. All kinds of stuff. You gotta watch this stuff, y'all. Cognitive dissonance. You know the relationship is unhealthy, but you stay because you feel emotionally attached and convinced that they care. And you might have think, oh, I've invested all this time and we are really close and nobody knows me like they do. They know the hurt part of yourself. And do you want to stay hurt? Because if you want to stay hurt, then stay. But if you don't want to be hurt anymore, it's not going to change because nothing changes if nothing changes. So the loss of self, sometimes we're there for so long, we lose ourself. We don't even know, what do I want anymore? What do I want? Eventually you stop asking, what do I feel? And you start asking, what will keep the peace, right, Pam? Like we learned as children, Lewis, but men hardly ever try to capitalize for themselves. I don't know. Rare. Uh-huh. Okay. Well, why you broke and it got no money? So we start asking, what will I do to keep the peace? I know these are hard times, so I'm not saying anything bad because a lot of people broke and don't have any money. But is it, are you choosing or is it just a condition is all I'm saying, Lewis? Because I love you, I'm not in it for me. See, that's what I talk about here, though, is I think that we could have mutual relationships and I'm not going to settle. If I don't have a mutual relationship, I ain't chasing nothing, and if I don't have a mutual relationship, and I'm also not avoiding, I'm pretty upfront, it's like, oh, I'm not a casual person. Some people will be like, they'll say, okay, well, if we find that we, get along well, would you be interested? No. If you're asking me this in the beginning, that's your goal. That's your primary purpose. You aren't trying to connect with another person. I'm deeper than that. So I have to acknowledge and love myself and appreciate myself. Good morning, Don. How are you doing this morning? I hope you'll be able to stay here because because I have rights. Well, I'm broke and have no money either. Well, I'm not totally broke either, but I don't have as much money as I would like. I don't, but it's just these times. Okay. All right, here we go. Here we grow. We're going to talk about the solutions here pretty soon. Okay. So we get into these relationships and we think, what do I just need to do to keep the peace? And your needs, your boundary, your identity, your self-worth will disappear inside these kind of relationships, inside of a trauma bond. I love being in nature too. Nature's a good thing. Because somebody asked me earlier if I thought about, how the internet, I mean, how, if people, because they seek things outside of themselves. And I think that when we connect with nature, we can see ourselves in nature, the expansiveness and the wonders and the curiosity and the childlike state that we were born to have and keep. Don, I used to think a man tell me he loves me, he meant it. Not true. They just want one thing. That's not all of them. I don't think that we can just categorize men in one category and women in one category, but I understand that that feels that way. And it's true. We're on one of those dating apps. It's like, okay, those made me sick. Those men are on there like, laying on their pillow. I'm telling y'all guys, if you do this, you're not gonna laying on their pillow with no shirt on, with their armpits hanging out, and it's like, I'm like, swipe. Or they have a beer or cocktail in their hand with some glassy eyes. Swipe. I know, right? It's like, I'm not even on those sites anymore. Mm-mm. Rayer, got cameras in your room? No, darling, I do not. Why boundaries often fail. Back to the topic. Yeah, yeah, Don. The thing is that I had to learn not to. I used to get so flattered and so impressed with these guys, and I'd be so flattered and impressed that I would think that whatever they're telling me, I didn't pay attention to their actions. And then, sometimes we used to say actions speak louder than words. So when they were nice, they were really nice. But when they weren't communicating, we're like, actions speak louder than words, and the rationalization and justification. And it's bullshit, y'all. It's just bullshit. I'm going to call it like it is. All right. So, okay. There you go. If OnlyFans is for you, that's fine. How are you affording OnlyFans if you broke, though? That's the question. So, why boundaries often fail? Back to the topic. All right. One of the biggest misunderstandings about trauma bonds is believing boundaries alone will fix them. And a lot of people don't even know how to set boundaries. A lot of people don't even know how to set them. And we think that boundaries are what we learned as childhood. And that's why we're afraid of conflict and confrontation. Either you didn't ever see it, your parents just all of a sudden split up and you're like, I don't know what happened. Or you saw parents that were fighting and you're like, oh, I don't feel safe. So the point is neither one feels safe. So learning how to set boundaries. Setting boundaries aren't like making ultimatums. It's not making rules, and it's not, what was the other one? It's not ultimatums, making rules. It's a lot of things. It's not. Boundaries are loving boundaries, and they're more for you to learn for yourself so that you don't get pulled in to relationships that aren't going to be healthy for you, so that you don't get pulled into a trauma bond with rationalizing and justifying. The words, they have to use their words too, at least for me. That's what I've learned about healthy relationships is I've learned to state what I want, need, and desire. And if somebody can't do that, then we can still be friends, but that's it. We can, and it's the casual to me means I'm going to see you when I have time to see you, but we ain't having sex. You know what I mean? I'm not judging, but that's not, the thing. I'm not hungry for love. I have love within me. And when we have love within us, we're not looking for it outside of ourselves. Young men today cannot get a woman these days, but in the modern world with money, so can't never work. Well, it's hard these days. I'm not saying that a lot of work is there because a lot of people are struggling, but it's not forever and it's not for good. It's going to come out of it at some point in time because everything that's good is bad, is good until it's not. That's our addictions, our coping skills, and everything that's bad, our coping skills, once again, sometimes is bad until it's not. And that requires recovery, healing. That's why I say I'm a recovery coach, is because it requires us to be able to look at ourselves rather than our existence being on somebody else like it might be in a trauma bond. Trauma bonds are nervous system conditioning. Like some of us have said, we might have learned it growing up, how to navigate and actually not navigate because we can navigate the curiosity of our adventure in life. 29, darling, you are too young, even if were not casual, So anyway, boundaries are healthy and necessary, but boundaries are behavioral tools. Trauma bonds are nervous system conditioning. So knowing the difference, sometimes we just need to know the difference because your body is telling you when you're in a trauma bond. It's telling you. Are we listening? See, that's the thing. See you later, Five Elements Infinity. Thank you for hopping on. Oh, well, okay. Have a lovely day. You have a lovely day too. So if boundaries alone worked, people would never go back to toxic relationships, right? Because a lot of people have set ultimatums and they've asked people not to do certain things, but they haven't said it with certainty, with that assurity of setting that boundary with themselves. Because when they're unsure of themselves and insecure, then we'll say, I did it. That nobody ever listens to me because I didn't look them in the eyes. I didn't let them know I was serious because I myself was afraid of rejection, afraid of abandonment. So I was not serious either because I didn't have that security in myself. So I certainly wasn't secure. So people can sense when you're not secure. If you don't look them in the eyes, they won't sense that you're telling the truth a lot of times. The eyes are the window to the soul. I truly believe that. Male humans in childhood birth, we can all receive these mixed messages. What we know is our amniotic fluid that turns into your cerebrospinal fluid. Your cerebrospinal fluid is what coats your brain, is on the outside of your brain, and it passes up and down your ganglia chains in your back. So when it passes up and down your ganglia chains, or it doesn't, because if you're in trauma, what you're doing is you're blocking it. So if you go to a Reiki practitioner and they say, oh, your chakras are blocked, like me, then what's happened is that you're sensitive in a certain area. I'm not a therapist, I'm a coach. A lot of people tell me I help them a lot better than a therapist. I'm a coach. You're right, Rodolfo, it is. And from what you've told me, yes, it's runs rampant, you know. Good. I'm glad that that's helpful. So what happens is many people set boundaries and still return because the body interprets separation as danger because you've learned to live that way. So you're used to that light breathing. And once you can breathe again, your body has gotten used to not breathing, so it will go back into it. You'll start feeling overwhelmed, you'll start feeling anxious, and these type of things with that separation because you're used to your nerves jumping. The same with when I'm working with people with Reiki. And what happened with me with Reiki is I'm an addict. I've got, next month I'll have 29 years clean and sober. So I don't do any drugs. I don't go to the doctor and have them ask me what's wrong with you, because I know what's wrong with me now, you know. And I get to, it's a journey, it's an adventure, and I have to be more curious about me and what's going on with me than about what's going on with somebody else, unless they're paying for a session with me. You know what I mean? So, hey, Russell. Well, we can all thank you, Pammy. Greg, AI, Joseph. Oh, that's a smooth line. Even it's not a lie. Okay. So if many people set boundaries and still return because the body interprets that, you know, as danger when they're separated from that. So I had to learn through getting my chakras balanced how to get my body, because my central nervous system, we don't realize how much our body is jumping. And until I started getting Reiki on me, I didn't realize how much my body could be triggered and was jumping. So the first time that I had Reiki, Lewis, basically it's harder. Okay. So the first time I had Reiki, I thought, this is weird, because I was relaxed. I laid on a table and they, you know, get under, you know, you and do the Reiki. But then after 2 weeks, I noticed that I didn't react to things that I used to react to. So I had Reiki for years, for 16, 17 years, I had Reiki done on me so that I didn't wake up like this. I didn't wake up calm. I didn't wake up, you know, being able to help people relax. It was something that I did over and over and over, like that word consistency, practice and development. That's what it took. I didn't just wake up one day and say, oh, that's what it is, I'm cured now. That's not how it works, y'all. We have to practice and develop get that relationship back with that inner child, heal that inner child, recognize that inner child, because that's what came up. Don, Reiki, exactly, Reiki. Yes, I do online Reiki and I do in-person Reiki too. Well, even Jesus, I think, did Reiki, Nicholas Underwood. I believe that that's probably what Jesus did when he talked about hands-on healing. Reiki. Don spelt it right. It's R-E-I-K-I. So that's what it is. I'm about to sell my program to Udemy, or not sell it to Udemy, but sell it on Udemy. Rodolfo, what is the cerebral? Oh, thank you for getting me to go back to that. Thank you. So what happens is when you're born, some of that amniotic fluid comes out just a little bit in that umbilical cord, which turns into the cerebrospinal fluid, which passes up and down your spine. So if you ever listen to Dr. Joe Dispenza, he will talk about how this fluid goes up and down your spine. Well, it's kind of like a lubricant. Don't go there, y'all. But it's kind of, so what it does is the bones, your bones, your spine, your skeletal structure. So your ganglia chains are your autonomic system and your cerebral spinal system. Your autonomic system is when your brain tells you to get up and go to the bathroom, or when you get triggered by something outside of you, your brain has data on it. And so your brain automatically sends these fluids down your body, whether it's adrenaline or cortisol, like we talked about earlier. It sends those fluids down your body. Or if you get scared, what happens is those fluids get stoved. Thank you, Ray. Rayer. So if those fluids get stoved, that's when they'll say your chakras are blocked, right? It's because when we go, what we're doing is we're not letting the breath go, so the fluids aren't getting to go down, and so we're feeling kind of stoved up in our body. Our mind will be stoved up because we're not getting breath, so we'll feel stuck. Let me get a drink of water, y'all. I've been talking and talking and talking. Okay. So did that explain it, Rodolfo? Did that help some? So sometimes when you hear people talking about Kundalini, that's the woo-woo word for it. But really, you need to be having those fluids going up and down and aligning when people are talking about alignment. That has to do with that. Nicholas, this isn't a religious channel. We don't talk about religion, politics, my age, and some other things. But you're welcome to be here. We're talking about trauma bonds, okay? Spinal. Yeah, so some of that amniotic fluid turns into your, because when your umbilical cord's cut, there's still some of the amniotic fluid in there. And so that turns into your cerebral spinal fluid. Good. I'm glad it was helpful. There's so much going on with your body. Then, I will let y'all know when I get my course up on Udemy. So that if you want, you can buy that course, because Pam, I don't know if she's still on here, but Pam did the course. And I don't think that people realize all the chemicals that are being released, the hormones being released in your body from your thoughts and your feelings. That expresses, it works back and forth. So the nervous system often chooses familiar pain over unfamiliar freedom. Your chakras wouldn't. It's chakras, y'all. Chakras, C-H-A-K-R-A-S. Thank y'all. That's cute, though. I like the chakras. But the chakras calm you down. The chakras probably don't calm you down. Thank you, Don. Exactly. So, yeah. Thank you, Pam. Yeah, I'm going to put that one that y'all did. I'm going to record it and put it on Udemy and sell it on Udemy. And I'm going to create another course for y'all. So, but if y'all know anyone who needs my self-trust reset, that's a 3-month intensive program. So people would meet with me 3 times a month and have a phone call on one time, so that accountability starts for people trying to make real change. Is sometimes you need somebody right there. And so that's the self-trust reset, 3 months. So it's to help you understand where your ego and your soul are making decisions for you. Because we can go to extremes, too far on the soul side to being a doormat, or we can go too far from the ego side to being a hard ass. And so in between, there's harmony, because sometimes you need to know when to be a hard ass, and sometimes you need to know when to be sweet. But together, you can still have both of those together in harmony. Thank you, Rayer. Thank you, Russell. Okay. Thank you. All right. Thank you, Pam. Okay. So sometimes, you know, we finally begin enforcing boundaries. Unhealthy people will often escalate their behavior instead of respecting the limit. I know that there's some people here that happens or has happened too, is you try to set a boundary and then they push harder. Because in like Irap was saying earlier, I think Irap got mad because, but anyway, we do live in a world of attraction and repulsion. So we also live in a world where, it's going to happen. Good night, Greg. You have a good evening. I don't know if Robbie's still here. He's down there with you. So now I know what time it is in Robbie's zone too. Thank you, Don. Rodolfo, tidbit. Some people with Parkinson's disease, some travels up and down. Right, right. Parkinson's disease is such a hard disease. It is. Okay, Rare. You have a good day at work. Thank you. All right. So like I said, when you start pushing, you start having boundaries. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. When you start having boundaries, sometimes people will push harder to get their way. And I have to ask myself sometimes. I tell my clients, I tell anyone, that sometimes when I think somebody's having control issues, I have to ask myself, am I having control issues? Because that's the first thing. Before I start judging somebody else, I ask myself, Stacy, are you having, because sometimes my control issues are indeed bucking up to somebody else's control issues, because we all have some kind of, we all want to get our way. Human beings, we're in denial if we say that's not true, because human beings, we either are afraid we're going to lose what we have or that we're not going to get what we want. So we do feel like there's a certain amount that we have to control to do that. I wish people knew how beautiful they are too, Russell. Thank you. All right. Well, we've talked about illusions and and things too. Rodolfo Ray, Judith Light was delightful, but should be like 100 years old now. If he bad and okay, some of this I'm not going to even talk. So thank you, Rodolfo. When you start finally enforcing boundaries, unhealthy people often escalate their behavior, like I said. So this is where we call this as an extinction burst. So you may suddenly experience, this is what happens when they start pushing harder. You may experience guilt, manipulation, anger, threats, blame, intense love bombing, emotional desperation. This is that control that I'm talking about, right? So we have to be careful. So not because the relationship is healing, but because control is being threatened. Their control is threatening, your control of yourself is threatening their control. Because if they've gotten comfortable controlling you and you've allowed that, it's going to be hard to break that. They are not going to be pleased. You're not just going to set a boundary and they're going to say, oh, I see things the way that you say. They may talk shit about you behind your back if they're being passive aggressive. They may assassinate your character to other people. They may talk about you. Hello from Bangladesh. Know your creator. It's good to see you today. So a healthy person will respect your boundaries. This is how you can tell a healthy person and an unhealthy person. A healthy person respects your boundaries. A toxic person will punish your boundaries. All right. Thank you, know your creator. So when someone repeatedly violates, mocks, ignores, or retaliates against your boundaries, the boundary has done its job. It has revealed the truth of the relationship, see? But a lot of people will start bending themselves once again and compromising themselves once again to try to save the relationship. But that person is telling you that they do not love you. They love themselves more. Sometimes we can't, as y'all have heard me say before, you can't love someone else and love yourself. Some of you were taught that love was sacrifice. I think that love can be more of a mutual thing. So we're going to create our reality to what we think our reality is. And so you get to decide what your reality is rather than running on default and having to feel like you navigate through everything else. I love you too, Grinchy. Did y'all hear Grinchy tell me he loved me? So when someone repeatedly violates, mocks, ignores, and retaliates against your boundaries, the boundary's done its job, like I said. So you can be happy that you get to break that tie now rather than subjecting yourself to more abuse, because it's only going to get worse. We hope that it's going to get better, but it's only going to get worse because they've gotten comfortable, too comfortable. And somebody who's committed to misunderstanding you, I know, Grinchy's so cute. So when it may be time to leave, like I said on Monday night, people that realize that they want to hold on to you and they're willing to go to therapy, they're willing to heal those parts of them that makes them have some of these things that they have, in recovery and, some of the alcohol or drug addiction and or overeating or whatever. What was I going to say with that? We have defects of character. And so some of these things that I have talked about may be defects of character in our recovery, that this might have been a way that we had our survival skills, because also the person who's doing these things are living off of survival skills. That need to control is their fear, you know. So while we can't help them, maybe we can't participate, maybe it's time to leave. We don't have to hurt them anymore. We don't have to assassinate their character if people are willing to help them themselves. Exactly, Pam. If they're not willing to help themselves, there's nothing you can do, nothing I can do. If somebody's not trying, if they have a problem for every solution, or they turn it back on you that you're the problem, you can be the problem, but mutuality means that we both look at this and safely, clearly see what the problem is. Because it might be me, it might be you, but to be an adult, a mature, emotionally mature adult means that we are able to look at that without judgment, that we can look at it discerningly. You have an entire theory. Okay. Well, thank you. I like psychology too. So it may be time to leave when your safety is compromised, when you don't feel comfortable going out with your friends anymore, when you don't feel comfortable talking on the phone when they're in the house, when you don't feel comfortable, period, when your friends stop by. So it may be time to leave when your safety is compromised. You're emotionally deteriorating. You're probably getting physically ill when this is happening. And I don't know about y'all, but I'm not having my physical. It was a gift to give. It was a gift from my source. My vital life force is a gift. And I'm not letting anybody take my gift away. Because even that, when you recognize your gifts, that in itself, if you're still breathing and alive, you have a gift and you're here for a reason. Anxiety and fear have become your normal state. So when your central nervous system is always jumpy or you don't feel comfortable anywhere, that's your survival. The good times are disappearing. I stayed in a relationship for 5 years. And the thing is it took me forever to figure this out because I was drinking back in those days. I was a mom and I was a wife and I was drinking. And then so for the first 5 years, I was drinking in the relationship. And then I got sober and then I stayed 5 more years before I went to therapy, but I was unhappy that 5 years. So I didn't put it together that I had stopped drinking. See, I had learned to cope with alcohol. So I would, I'm more apt to when somebody's acting up to be like, okay, never mind, whatever, blow it off. And that was my coping mechanism. But when I didn't have that anymore, this person was getting on my nerves, and it wasn't all their fault. It was that some of the things were triggers from my childhood. So I'm not saying that it was all their fault. Neither of us had the emotional maturity to take a look at ourselves, though, at the time. So I went to therapy and I started learning about my codependency. So I worked on myself. So when things aren't going well, we need to work on ourselves instead of trying to rescue, instead of trying to pull that other person back. Work on ourselves. I'm not saying you have to leave. If it's safe, you may not have to leave. But if you're not feeling safe, your safety is important. And maybe you didn't feel that as a child. Maybe you didn't feel that as an adult somewhere. But your safety is important. That's part of the reason also, because your root chakra is where you feel safe. You know, that's why it's important for that fluid to go up. It goes down to the root and then it comes back up. I know, Don, I hate that for you. I really do. I really do. But when you breathe, hopefully you feel safe, because I didn't feel safe at one time either. And when I entered into therapy, like I'm telling y'all, when I had that 5 years, and see, this is the thing. Let me point out how we rationalize and justify now, and how we don't know how to put two and two together. Because I didn't know how to put two and two together. My rationalizing and justifying was trying to still make things make sense that didn't make sense. So I go to therapy, and I tell her, well, for 5 years I was happy. Of course I was happy. I was drunk half the time, but for 5 years I was happy. And then these last 5 years, I said, if I'm unhappy for 5 years, then I'm going to leave. And my therapist looks at me and she goes, why? Because that's rationalization and justification. If we're unhappy, we are unhappy. The reality was that I didn't trust myself. I did not have self-trust. And so I was scared to leave, but I did leave because I became scared all the time. Because I grew up in a house where when mom and dad got in a fight on vacation, we would go get the guns. So I had a fear that this man was actually going to get guns or some way to off me and bury me out in the woods. Yeah, for real. That was ingrained and embedded and imprinted in me, that I would think this, that because he would even tell people, he would say jokingly, you know what, I have 10 acres here. I could bury somebody out there and nobody'd ever know. He didn't. He didn't. He just liked to talk like that. But still, as a child suffering with trauma, what we hear, I talked about that the other evening. Sometimes we rehear these things and it sets our central nervous system off, especially if our central nervous system was hopped up anyway. Pam, you understand that for sure. See, girl, that's why we're here. That's right, Rodolfo. I was. Like I said, next month's 29 years. Hadn't drank. So one of the hardest truths to accept is, and sometimes I didn't finish the thing. So the good times are disappearing. That's when I started talking about that 5 years and 5 years, and my therapist looking at me and going, what? Why did you stay 5 unhappy years? Most normal people wouldn't say, I'm going to stay, but I didn't put two and two together. That now I know that part of the reason was because I was absent to myself when I was drinking. I was absent to him. I was absent to the kids. I was absent, I deserted myself too, though. So I wasn't a full person. So I had to own that, Sometimes people are waiting for the version of the person that no longer exists. Because if you were love bombed in the beginning of a relationship, that was romantic, damn it. So we want to be love bombed again, right? And so we wait. When the lines get blurred, yes. Gabriel. It's good to see you, Gabriel. You're taking the CBT therapy course? Yes, I kind of do. I do a lot of the things like my therapist or coach did with me. So there's a lot of different therapy modalities that I do. Hey, Katan, it's good to see you. Big D. I think it comes with age. The same thing happened with me after I turned 50. Yeah? So yeah, the older we get, the wiser we get. It is true. It is true. So you lose yourself trying to save the relationship. These are signs when it's time to go. These signs when it's time to go. Of course you're going to need help because we second guess ourselves. My poor mom, she would go away. We'd go get the guns, go away. Then we would come back. Then we would go away. Then we would come back. So I was insecure and I didn't have a sense of safety because guns are scary, y'all. Guns are scary. I'm not saying that people don't need them. I don't have any thoughts or opinions, really. I mean, I think that, never mind. That's not what I'm on here for. That's not our topic. Trauma bond. Guns could have certainly been a part of a trauma bond. other things too. So this is the end of this. Would anybody like to offer up? Was this helpful for y'all? Do you see, how we can fall into a trauma bond, how we can break that trauma bond, and that self-realization? Gabriel, or is it Gabriel? It's always good to see a true mental health specialist such as yourself talking to people in the chat. Thank you, Gabrielle. Thank you so much. So the thing is that breathing, what happens is when we experience trauma, no matter what age, I had to learn this in karate also. Y'all know that I used to teach karate, and breath was a lot of the karate. This gives you tenacity. This gives you perseverance, because a lot of people think that fighting is just fighting, and it can be just fighting. But in karate, it was more like self-defense, because we don't just beat people up because we know karate, okay? So it's more about being able to get oxygen to our mind to be able to see where to hit if we did need to hit, or what technique to use to take somebody down. Thanks so much, Rodolfo. I'm glad you found it helpful, and I appreciate you for making suggestions about topics that are going to help you, because I know that we live in this collective, and the topics that help you are going to also help other people. So I want to encourage people who have something weighing on them to also, let me know if there's something that I could speak about that might help you in your journey, because you do matter. Each and every one of you matters, and sometimes we can get to feeling like we don't matter. I get to work with people all the time that don't feel like they matter, and you do matter. So I want you to know that. And I want you to breathe in that I matter. I am good enough. Maybe you need to put that on your mirror instead of comparing yourself with everybody else. I am good enough. Yes, Pammy, we do. So let's take those breaths in and hold the feeling of that curiosity, that childlike. Exactly, it is Texas. I am from Fort Worth, Texas. It's too bad they started filming movies there when I left, because it would be fun to be an extra in a movie. And they have that there all the time now. And I don't get to do it because I'm over here in Mexico, and then I'm going to be in Spain at some point in time. So I'm like going and doing things that I never thought that I could do. And that's what I try to do as a mindset coach, to help others do that too. Because as you know, on my Facebook, I said the other day that I had my coach was like my fairy goddess mother. I wouldn't be where I am today if I didn't learn how to regulate, if I didn't learn how to, how my body and my mind are deeply connected, And so let's breathe into our body. When you breathe into your body, I mean deeply, like you did when you were a child. Thank you, Pam. Thank you so much. And if you like this and you haven't subscribed, please consider subscribing to me and subscribe to Pam too. And if you want to be subscribed to, then please put your link in here as well, because this channel is about supporting one another. Okay? So we're going to take that deep breath in, fill up me. My phone rang. So if you can't, just breathe with me, because we're near the end of the live anyway. Pammy, can you hear me? I bet y'all can't hear me. All right. Let's take a deep breath in. Breathe in. Hold it. And release. I don't know if y'all can hear me. You can hear Rodolfo? Good. Okay, we're just on our breaths now. So y'all, let's breathe. And if I miss y'all, I'll be here Friday night, 6 o'clock. 6 o'clock Friday night, okay? So breathe in. Hold it. Release. Breathe. Hold it. Release. 2 more. Breathe in. Hold it. Release. Last one. Breathe in. Hold it. And release. Thank you, Russell. Thank you, Pam. Thank y'all so much. I had to hit the reject. I have a phone call coming in. It's my friend. I'm going to pick her up at the airport, I think, today, unless she's calling to tell me she's not coming in when she was coming in. So I'm going to have to go ask her, answer her phone call. But I want to thank you all so much. I do love and appreciate you. And I'm so proud of you all in this community. And I look forward to seeing you Friday night at 6 o'clock Central Standard Time, okay? An hour earlier. All right. Thank y'all so much. Again, if I appreciate you too, Rodolfo. Thank you so much. All right. If anyone's interested in one-on-one coaching or the self-trust reset program, please email me in the description box below. Okay. All right. Because the parrot plucks his feathers. He wants to be human like me, or he's so hot down here in Mexico. I don't know. Why are you plucking your feathers? He doesn't ever tell me. Bye, y'all. Thank you so much. Thanks so much, Pammy. Oops. Let me figure out how to. I will tell my bird you said hi.